There we go. So welcome, Meg and Mark, and we're so happy to have you with us and look forward to your presentation on the prayer shawl ministry and the spirituality involved with that. So Meg, I think you're going to start off.
I am. I want to thank everyone who's here. I know listening to something about prayer, people knitting prayer shawls probably isn't in the top 10 of your entertainment today. So I really appreciate your interest and your support. And we also have some knitters with us. I just want to recognize them for the rest of you. Connie, Dor, Judy, and Merrill are all knitters in the prayer shawl ministry. We have several more, but for one reason or another, they couldn't make it today. But I really appreciate your support, ladies. I have an opening prayer, and it's sort of a prayer blessing that gives an overview of what we're actually doing when we're knitting on Tuesday afternoons. As we gather in community to share our prayer, our stories, the work of our hearts and hands, we pray for God's blessing on our endeavors. A blessing to my mind to be free to enter this time of contemplative activity. A blessing to my hands to be the source of creating something of beauty and love. A blessing to my soul to be open to the promptings of loving and caring. A blessing to my yarn to be shaped into patterns of loving and caring. A blessing to my needles to be the holders of stitches as they become a whole garment. A blessing to my knitting to be the work of heart and hands, body and spirit. A blessing on the one who will receive the fruit of my prayer and my knitting. May this shawl be welcomed in the spirit of which it was knitted. May we become one with the one who knitted each of us in our mother's womb. I join my blessing, my prayer, and my knitting with women all over the earth in this common effort to bring healing and wholeness, comfort, and celebration. Amen.
Amen.
The history of the prayer shawl ministry in the United States started in 1998, 22 years ago. And it was founded by two women, Janet Severi Bristow and Victoria Gallo. And they were two women who were, they met while attending the Women's Leadership Institute at the Hartford Seminary in Hartford, Connecticut. They joined together with the idea of combining the love of knitting and crochet with the desire to reach out to those in need of comfort as well as joy. Whatever you want to call it, a prayer shawl, a peace shawl, a comfort shawl, a mantle, whatever the name you give it, they all serve the same purpose. These are wearable hugs crafted with love, an intent from the maker to the recipient. Whether it be personal words, verse, song, mantra, prayer, or something else, it is these thoughts imbued into the shawl with each stitch that make them what they are. Mark, give a...
Thank you. So I came into being involved in the prayer shawl late during when I was living down in Florida, and there was a lockdown. I started knitting. I didn't have anything else that I could do, and having groceries delivered and so forth. So I just thought, well, I can have yarn delivered too. So so we started knitting, and then we moved back to Colorado here, and we spent several times going down to support my sister-in-law, whose husband was failing, excuse me, in his health, and then as we were down there planning the funeral, somebody from her church came over to give her a prayer shawl. And I just saw the emotion and how blessed she felt getting that, and it was just a very wonderful experience to actually see her feel comforted by that shawl. So I thought, gosh, when I get back to Colorado, I'm going to see if we have a prayer shawl ministry in our church. And sure enough, they used to have one and it kind of died away. So I asked permission to revive it. So somebody told me, you probably won't get too many knitters, that'll do that, and maybe you should just do it in the community that you live and blah, blah, blah. And as it turned out, we have over 12 knitters and crocheters in our group. And we meet actually on Tuesday afternoons as well. Isn't that ironic? So we have a really good time. We support each other. When I first started doing it, I thought, let's play some meditative music while we knit and crochet. And they said, oh, no, we don't want to do that. And these women are absolutely a hoot to be around. There's lots of lively conversation. You learn a lot about people's lives, and you learn a lot about the people in our church because they talk about the people for whom we're going to be knitting these prayer shawls. So, and our oldest knitter in the group is 92 years old, just had her birthday. So anyhow, I think that is probably all I would like to say for the introductory things. I should say that we do other things other than just knitting prayer shawls. We have the shawls, of course. We also have shawls that are smaller for children, and we also have lap blankets for anybody who is in a wheelchair. And then we have also raised money by selling, or not selling, by offering donation, or having people offer donations for things like dishcloths, prayer squares, and the like. And so one Sunday we raised about $67 for to go into our coffers to buy yarn. So, and we're also knitting for the help, the needy who need hats, scarves, and mittens. And we're going to be selling things in a craft sale coming up in December. So our ministry is actually spread, beyond the prayer shawl, but as Meg said, whatever you knit and whatever you have gives comfort to the person who is going to be receiving it. So I'll send it back to you, Meg.
All right, I'd like to share with you a prayer shawl. The basic pattern of the prayer shawl are three knits followed by 3 purls, 3 knits, 3 purls. And they actually, if you want to say, if you want to stay on track, even though my husband will say it's muscle memory, it's Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. So as you change from your knit to your purl, you can say to yourself, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Now that's probably done more at home because, as Mark described, we have a lot of chatting to do, a lot of laughing to do, sometimes some tears. So our prayer shawl is delivered in a bag like this. And the prayer shawl will have a little tag in it that says, has a little cross, and it says, pray, love, hope, St. Boniface Church, Siesta Key. So that's on the inside. And then this is the pattern. And then we've incorporated putting pockets on ours for people if they want to put Kleenex or a cell phone or something else. So we think that's kind of a clever idea. And then we include a card that Betsy had put together for us years ago. And she printed enough, so we have a pretty good supply. And inside it says, this prayer shawl was made especially for you by the Prayer Shawl Ministry at St. Boniface Episcopal Church, Sarasota, Florida. And then there's a prayer here that says, in the name of God, our creator and giver of life, in the name of Jesus, our savior, healer and lifter of pain, in the name of the Spirit, the comforter, the consoler, the sustainer of life, this shawl is a mantle of caring and protection, a mantle of healing and wholeness, a mantle of patience and strength, a mantle to enfold and encircle you, a mantle of blessing and empowerment. Wear this shawl and know that you are loved. The members of the Prayer Shawl Ministry, St. Boniface Church. So that's the package that we put together typically for to give to people. And was there anything you wanted to share at this point, Mark?
So also, I don't know that we have as formal of a package, and I can't get everybody to knit the same pattern. So we have multiple different patterns that people will knit. But we actually do have a card that we give out. It's blank on the inside, and we hand write on the inside, and this is what we write. As you wrap this prayer shawl around you, may you feel the warmth and comfort of God's love, and may it remind you that you are in the prayers of our church family. God bless you, All Saints Lutheran Church. So that's what we have done for this point. And I would like to show a picture of when we actually had our blessing of the shawls done, if this comes across in the church. But here is, can you see that? So there's all the shawls that are lined up on the railing of the church. We kind of have a church in the round there. I don't know, can you all see that? So what we did before we had them blessed in the church is that we put all of our shawls out on the table in our room. We sit around one big table, and so we had the shawls there, and we did our own blessing before it was done in the church. And the blessing that we did was, may God's grace upon these shawls and blankets, and may God's grace be upon these shawls and blankets, and allow them to be warming, comforting, enfolding, and embracing. May these works be a safe haven and a sacred place of security and well-being that sustains and embraces the recipient in good times as well as difficult ones. May the ones who receive these shawls and blankets be cradled in hope, kept in joy, graced in peace, and wrapped in love. Blessed be us as creators of these works, and blessed be the recipient of our work. So I guess I can send it back to you, Meg.
So the prayer shawls, as Mark just referred to, they don't have to be the 3-3 pattern. They can be crocheted, woven, worked in any way somebody, because it does get sometimes a little boring. And they can be adorned with some beads or baubles or anything. Or they can just be left plain and understated. They can be shocking pink. They can be a muted tan. They can be anything in between. And in the instance of these shawls, the product is the physical representation of the process. Because the process is a journey of thought through thought and intent. And just to show you an example of what I mean by that, this one is done by one of our more talented knitters, to be remain unnamed. But this one has a gorgeous cable knit in it.
Oh, nice.
You see that? Very, very nice. So we do other patterns, and so it just doesn't really make any difference. It absolutely makes no difference what you do. a couple of supportive things in our church for the ministry. Every single Sunday in the Sunday bulletin, we are mentioned inside under healing. And it's just so comforting not to see my name there, but to see that the prayer shawl ministry is mentioned oftentimes with the healing mission, which I'll get to in a minute. Last week it was mentioned with the Beyond the Broken Heart, something that Rita oversees. Behind me, I put samples of thank you cards that we've received. And I just picked a couple just to read to you. Dear members of the Prayer Shawl Ministry of St. Boniface Episcopal Church, on Saturday, August 11th, I received a prayer shawl in the afternoon mail and immediately wrapped it around me. From that moment and throughout the night, I felt surrounded by love and prayers in God's presence. Thank you all for being a part of this exceptional ministry. You are all in my thoughts and prayers, forever grateful. I mean, that's so sweet, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Dear ladies, thank you very much for the beautiful prayer shawl that you lovingly made for me. I will treasure it forever, knowing how many prayers and loving thoughts it contains. Your companion helped me through the surgery and recovery. Thank you all very much. God bless you. Not that we expect thank you cards, but it's just, they're nice, it's lovely. So the distribution, we have a basket of prayer shawls in the healing mission, and they're offered to people that obviously visit the healing mission. We have Eucharistic lay ministers. I know Doriel has taken several when she goes to visit people and bring them communion. We have personal requests, or if any of us know that someone needs a prayer shawl. Occasionally, one of our ministers will take a prayer shawl when they're visiting somebody in the hospital. But the prayer shawls aren't just for grief or loss or something sadness. It could be for a celebration. We actually had a grandmother request a prayer shawl for her granddaughter's wedding. She was a bride, and we had a particular kind of shawl that had a lot of ruffles on it. And she wanted one of those, so we knit. It was for the bride, which was kind of fun too. Remember that, ladies? We accept no payment. We're not supposed to. I mean, that's from the get-go. The original ladies that started the ministry, we don't expect any payment. But occasionally we've had a couple of very insistent people, and I said, just bring it to the church office and maybe they'll put it in a discretionary fund or something. And I think at one point, Betsy may have created some kind of a kitty for us. I don't know. I just remember something about whatever, but I've never tapped into it, so to speak. So if I pretend it doesn't exist, if there is one, what I'm trying to say is the ladies that knit with me, they all supply their own supplies. And so we take advantage of those 40% off coupons, those discounts in the back of Michael's or Joann's or Hobby Lobby. For example, this is a current one that, well, the prayer shawl's over in my living room, but this is a current example of a $2 for $2. And it takes about three of these skeins, about 550 yards of yarn to knit a complete shawl. So we used to get donations, and it was very nice for people to give us donations, and maybe you've given me some thought, Mark, about maybe just making some little prayer pockets and asking for donations for those. Because we did a pretty major clear out when we just had all these bits and bobs that we couldn't really use. This basically ends my portion of the presentation. Mark, did you have anything else you wanted to add?
Yeah, I was going to say that we, instead of a label inside of the shawls like you have, we were given a bunch of little crosses, and we knit and we sew on those crosses. Whoever makes the shawl picks out, you know, one of the designs of the crosses to actually sew onto the shawl itself. We hand deliver all of our shawls from our group. We haven't had anybody go outside. We have had somebody who wanted to mail one to her mother out of state, and we've done that. And like you, we do not accept any money for the shawls at all. That's all, you know, done in love and support and comfort for the person. So so the other thing too is that, you know, people will come up to us and say, you know, well, I know so-and-so who's having a rough time. They don't go to the church, you know, I think that they need a shawl, and we'll say, sure, that's fine. And we'll let that person, we'll still write out the card, and we'll let that person deliver the shawl to that person. And I think, I'm not sure if there was anything else that I wanted to add either. You know, I guess what I've learned a lot of things from this group. I actually, after I got everybody together, said, you know, whoever wants to take over the leadership of this group, you know, you're more than welcome to do it. They go, no, that's fine. You know, you're doing a great job. And, you know, it's like, whenever you open up your mouth and volunteer, you're usually volunteered, you know, so, but they're great people. We support each other. We just had one of our crocheters sisters who passed away, and she had just received the shawl while she was in hospice care, and she left to go back to Pennsylvania, I think it was, and she was thought that they were going to be buried they were going to bury her with the shawl on, but then the family decided, you know, no, they want to keep that shawl in memory of her. So whoever needs comfort in that family is going to be, you know, wearing that shawl. So there's a lot of things that, and we also gather and have parties too. I mean, we had a party in somebody's house when we got them blessed. And then we're also planning our holiday party in somebody's house as well. So we've really become quite a close-knit group, group. And it's also very interesting. The crocheters sit on one side of the table and the knitters seem to sit on the other side of the table. And it's interesting how those dynamics actually play out. But I've learned a lot about group interactions and not having to control things, to let things flow and then just be there when you have ideas and you know, let those ideas bloom. So I think that's about all I have.
Right. Well, Meg and Mark, thank you so much for your presentation. And this is a point where I can invite people to use the raise hand that Zoom has and under reactions at the bottom. And while they're doing that, I wanted to just share a couple of things. One of my ministries is that of being a hospital chaplain, and the hospital has a couple of congregations who knit or crochet short blankets that are given to patients. And just as you were saying, Mark, I've seen it time and time again that the prayer shawl goes on comforting and surrounding people after the patient has died, and the family wants to keep that prayer shawl that was with their loved one at the end of their life and hang on to it as part of the grieving process, which has been terrific. Also, when I'm not down here in Florida, I'm up at the Cathedral Church of St. Paul in Detroit. And I want to show a picture. We have a knitting group that makes hats, scarves, and mittens. And that it started out with just, maybe about 10 people at the cathedral, but now it's people all over the country send them in, and they make about 1,600 a year. They go out. We have for the homeless, we have a New Year's Day, a feast. And after the person's had their dinner, then they can come over to the cathedral and select a scarf and hat and mittens. And here's a picture. Let me get it here so you can see it, of the cathedral. And from here back to the great doors is 280 feet. And all the pews are covered with these scarves and hats and mittens. And then what aren't given out at that time, then go to homeless shelters in the Detroit area for members. So that's been my experience with the prayer shawls. And so we have a hand up from Denise. And Denise, go ahead. And
well, first of all, Meg and Mark, thanks so much for sharing the prayers and the blessings. That is just so cool that that's wrapped into those shawls. And I love the wearable hug. I think that's a great thing to call them. I do have a practical question though. Do you send any sort of washing instructions or anything like that with the shawls?
I'll answer that, I guess, first, if that's all right. We don't put a washing instruction, but all of our shawls are 100% washable. We wash them after we've knit them. And there's no fancy blocking or anything like that. They wash on a gentle cycle, but that's not a bad idea to put maybe some information like that. But they can go in the washer and dryer. That's ours can. What about you, Mark?
On the back of our cards, whoever is giving that out will write the washing instructions and care instructions. And like you, all of ours are washable and they can actually be dried in a very delicate cycle as well.
all right, thank you. Ron, you have your hand up. You need to unmute. There you go.
I'm a testifier. I'm Ron Carr. My wife was Ann Carr for many years, Altar Guild, Doriel, at St. Boniface. 5 years ago, Ralph McGimsey brought a shawl to her as she was at home and home hospice dying from multiple things, none of which were contagious. So I washed her shawl in cold water and Dreft and returned it back to the prayer shawl people. It was a beautiful cream colored shawl that when Ralph and Sandy Wilbur were both there. Sandy was our Eucharistic minister, and Ralph was he just loved Anne. Anne was his treasurer for 15 years at the Cathedral Church in Detroit. So it was a real love affair. The minute he put the shawl on Anne, till the time she died, she never took it off, nor would she let anybody take it off. She was very tidy, so there was no issue with other than maybe a little dust that settled on her, because she was immobile for 34 days, 7 hours and 6 minutes. And the impact of the shawl was, she knew she was dying, but it gave her great comfort. She felt wrapped in love with that shawl. And that's why your prayers are so on point, the effect of that shawl. So I thanked the prayer shawl ladies. I returned the shawl, but I testify and thank you for your ministry.
Thank you, Ron. I speak for I hope some of the other knitters have a few things to say. You're out there. You can unmute and say something. It can be funny.
Okay, Dora, you need to go ahead and unmute yourself. There you go.
I just wanted to say that I had eyed the knitting group, the prayer shawl group for years, but I was kind of reluctant to join because I hadn't knit it since high school. And that was a really long time ago. So one day I arrived at the meeting and I was so glad that I did. Meg took me under her wing. She got out the needles. She gave me some yarn and she even showed me how to.
Pass it on.
Well, if you've knitted, once you get the hang of it, it all comes back to you. So anybody that's reluctant because they don't feel their knitting's up to snuff, don't feel that way, because I'm probably the weakest knitter there. It takes me a year to knit a prayer shawl, but I love being there and being with the people and doing this job, not job, this whatever, but it's beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you, Dora. Any of the other prayer shawl participants that want to share something? If not, Michael or Rita have raised their hand.
I had one experience with prayer shawl. I've had many experiences receiving them, and one involvement. And first, what I want to say is I'm struck by the level of prayerful community, both Mark's group in Colorado and the group at St. Boniface. We had a small prayer shawl ministry, and I don't knit at all. I have no sense of that, but I really enjoyed being with people and watching that process of just how they flowed from laughter and then kind of being solemn, and that I personally wound up being very frustrated because I just could not get the hang of eye-hand coordination. So, but on the other hand, I've been on the receiving end, and when I had a surgery, I received a prayer shawl, and when I got out of the hospital, as I was in the recuperating chair that I could not move off of, I had my knee replaced. I didn't take the prayer shawl off. For some reason, every time pain would start, I would just go back to the love that was surrounding me and the intention of the people who actually made the shawl, even though I could not do that. And it's humbling to know that there is a task you cannot master. And so I really salute Mark and your group and Meg and your group, because as much as I would love that, I know that that's not a ministry that I can use as my expression, but I am so grateful for those of you who can. And I just appreciate you sharing today. And Mark, I love the fact that you've been very quiet. No matter how many times people have said the ladies have done this, I keep looking at you going like, yeah, well, they're not all ladies. Then there's Mark, and his group. So I think that speaks loudly to the fact that it's really the intent. It's not anything else that can bring people to this. It's the intent to want to be able to give of yourself in a way that's comfortable. So thank you both for that.
Thank you, Rita. And Vincent and Betsy have their hand up.
Actually, I would like to speak, but I see, Merrill, you had your hand up and you are part of the group. So I'll go after you.
All right, Merrill, you need to unmute.
Okay, I'll try and speak slowly so you can understand me. I spend some of my time in Wales, and I also attend a craft class on a Tuesday afternoon at St. George's Church in a place called Cwm Park in the Rhondda Valley. In August, I made a small prayer shawl, a shrug. I took it to the class, and with a couple of copies of the pattern, and explained what we did at St. Boniface. By the time I'd got back the following week to class, several of the knitters there had thought it was such a good idea when I told them the story behind it. They'd already started knitting prayer shawls and have begun a prayer shawl ministry at St. George's in Wales. It isn't unknown in the UK. My sister, who lives in England, has been a member of a prayer shawl ministry for many years. She's a crocheter. So I also attend St. Matthew's. We only have one vicar for 2 churches, and we're hoping to start a group there as well. So, and I must say we're lucky to have Meg coordinating us and keeping us all on track. And though you're not a weak knitter, you're wonderful. Your shawl that you're knitting at the moment is beautiful, but every single person there really does an exceptional job, and it's a lovely group, and I'm so glad to be part of it. So thank you.
Thank you, Merrill, for sharing, and Betsy.
Can I add one thing? You don't have to be, as Merrill is not a resident in Sarasota for all year round. We have 3 or 4 people that come and go seasonally. So, keep that in mind if you're interested.
Okay.
Dorielle wants to say something.
Yeah,
I
Dorielle.
think Betsy was next.
Oh.
And then I'll follow.
All right. Thank you, Dorielle.
Thanks, Dorielle. I just, as Ron said, I would like to be a testifier also. I forget what the occasion was, but my mother had received a prayer blanket from the St. Boniface prayer group, and I happened to be there when she opened it, and she said, wow, she could feel the energy coming off of that shawl, the prayers and the love, and it was truly palpable. And she treasured the shawl and the gesture that of all of you all. And then when she died, I received my own prayer shawl, which I'd never had before. And Connie, I think you delivered it to me. And it was just so wonderful to be wrapped in those prayers. And I could feel the prayers, but it was almost as though each one of you was hugging me too. And that was just such a beautiful feeling. So thank you for that. And I have a confession. I will never, ever be a knitter. I have tried on several occasions, and it's an utter disaster. So I have come to realize it's a gift I will not ever possess. So my question is, how long does it take you all to make a shawl?
It kind of depends upon the shawl that you're making and the pattern that you're using.
What you did.
Can you hear me?
Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, it kind of depends upon the pattern that you're doing and how fast you are at doing it. Some people will be able to knit one in maybe a week's time, and others, will take a little bit longer depending upon what the skill level is and the complexity of the pattern too. So yeah, I don't know what do you have to say, Meg?
Well, I think some of our knitters knit only on Tuesday afternoons, and then some of the other knitters will be knitting while they're watching television. It just all depends, but I don't imagine a shawl can get done much faster than a couple of weeks. I don't think any of us have ever knit a shawl in a week. I don't know, maybe Merrill has, I don't know. Or maybe Judy, I don't know. But it's at least a couple of weeks, and it's more like, I would say we average 2 months, maybe 6 weeks, 2 months.
Right, thank you. Dorielle?
Yes, thinking back to 2017, I received a prayer shawl, not from St. Boniface, but from a friend at the Presbyterian Church, who joined with Meg for a while because their group had no leader, and she asked, would they, did we have a group? So I sort of introduced her to Meg. I don't know if they still knit together, but anyway, I received a
Fran,
phone call from
Fran,
her. And that was very, very comforting for me at that time. But most recently, when Carlisle was ill and Meg delivered one to the front gate, we talked about it, and I went out and came in, and there was a shawl at the front gate. They said there was a package for me, and I picked it up and brought it home, and it was very comforting for him. Thank you both for what you're doing and all the groups. My most recent visit, well, it was a couple of months ago, I visited one of our parishioners who I had not seen for a while. And she was a loving member of our Wednesday evening group at one time, but somehow we were not able to catch up with her. I was asked to bring her communion one Sunday, and I mentioned it to Meg. And she said, do you think she would like a prayer shawl? And I said, that would be great. So she gave me the prayer shawl, and I brought it over to her. We did communion and everything, and then I presented her with the shawl, and her face lit up. She had the biggest smile, and she said, you know, I'm so happy that St. Boniface has not forgotten about me. And that was really a very emotional moment for me. I thought that was a wonderful thing. And I know she cherishes her prayer shawl. And the last one I took about a month ago to somebody else. She just loved it. She keeps it in the package. She does not want to open it. And I hope she has by now, but she just wants to make sure. She loves it so much. She is so thankful. And I am so happy that it brought comfort to her. So that's my story.
Well, thank you, Dorel, for sharing. Is there anyone else who would like to share or ask a question? All right. Anne, is that Anne, I think? You need to unmute yourself. Well, I tell you how, Anne's trying to figure out how to unmute. Grace, why don't you go ahead and share, and then when Anne's unmuted, we'll have her come back.
Okay, can you hear?
Anne, are you unmuted now?
Yes, it looks like I can wait. That's all right.
Go ahead.
Oh, okay.
Go ahead, Anne.
Okay, I would like to thank the ladies very, very much. My husband and I received one back in 20, I believe it was. He was dying of cancer, and it just came at the right time, and we shared it together. And I just can't say thank you enough. And it's very meaningful to me because I'm a knitter myself. And, you know, moving on, I think I would like to join the group.
You're more than welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Anne.
Yep.
And Grace?
Meg?
Yeah.
How are the time?
Oh, and we meet on Tuesdays from 1 to 2:30 in the church library.
Okay. Okay.
All right, Grace?
Every Tuesday?
Just about every Tuesday, yes. Holy Week, we don't meet, and occasionally we cancel for one reason or another, but we're there every week.
Okay. Okay. I'll be joining. Yes.
All right,
Thank
we
you.
look forward to it.
And Grace?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes, okay. The best team, the Eco Stewardship team follows the prayer group on Tuesdays, and we meet in the library as well. And sometimes I'm a little early and I walk in and I say, I'm just walking through into the parish hall, doors are locked. So, and I always enjoy just saying a quick hello and admire their work and their wonderful camaraderie. Their spiritual camaraderie. I think it's a terrific group. I wish more people did know about it. I told a little story to Meg at one point when my mother was in her waning days at 108 years old. And I went in and she had this blue and white knitted blanket, really small blanket. And she just loved it. And I said, where did that come from? And she said, I don't know, it just appeared. And I said, well, it's very nice. And she said, yes. And she wanted it with her the whole time. And I think it, I don't know where it came from in her assisted living place, but it went to her as she found it. And, you know, I never said anything to the prayer group at St. Boniface about wanting one for my mother or whatever, but it just happened and it was a lovely thing. So I know how special they can be. Mark, I want to ask you a quick question. It's great to see you. Are you doing any singing, by the way?
I am. I sing in our choir, which is a lot smaller than the choir at St. Boniface. And I've also in our church, the assisting minister is called a liturgist. And so I do that and lead in the Kyrie and so forth and do the prayers of the people. Yeah, so I'm still involved. And I was foolish enough to also volunteer to be on the church council. And so, you know, I actually said, well, you know, they asked me if I would want to put my name on the candidate, you know, as a candidate. And I said, well, sure. But, you know, if anybody else wants it, they're fine. But you know how things go in the church. If you volunteer, it's yours. Yeah, but I'm still involved. Yeah, thank you. Are you still singing?
No, during the COVID, I stopped and I've gone in for a few things when they need an extra singer or something, but and I have two little grandchildren and my daughter says, don't go anywhere, don't do it. So no, I love it though. And I enjoyed having you sitting behind me during all those rehearsals.
All right, thank you. Judy, you have your hand raised.
So as a member of the group, I just wanted to, who hasn't come very often because of COVID and whatever that's happened, but I just wanted to thank Meg and all the members of the group. It's just a phenomenal group, a lot of dedication and commitment and devotion to be there every Tuesday. Someone is always there and to carry on this work. And I also wanted to say something to Mark because I just, I think it's so wonderful that he has, you know, has done this. And there is a cultural bias in our country that men don't knit. But I just wanted to tell a quick story. So as many of you know, my husband is a Tibetan refugee. And when the Chinese invaded his country, he escaped to India and he was drafted into the Indian army. And he was on the border of Ladakh waiting for the Chinese to invade India. And he was a part of the Tibetan group and all of the army soldiers would knit. Well, as they were waiting, they would knit and they would pray. Knitting amongst men in that part of the world is not culturally taboo. It's very accepted, especially in the army. And they would knit their own socks, their own hats, their own gloves, and they would pray for the end of war, the end of poverty, the end of disaster, the end of all kinds of suffering for all sentient beings. So this is, he's the only other man I know who really knits. Not that he does it anymore, but enjoys it and can do it. So thank you, Mark. I just want you to know that all around the world, there are men who are knitting and they're praying and they're with you and they're with all of us. So thank you.
You're welcome. And actually, I actually heard a story where Scottish men who have their kilts on and their little bag in front also have like a pin on their shoulder, and that's where they do to keep their yarn, and they're knitters as well. So yeah, but you know, there's only two of us in the group that are males. You know, myself and Jesse, and but nobody seems to mind it at all.
Great.
Thank you, Judy. And Vince or Betsy, one of you.
I had a question for Meg and Mark. I mean, as you're part of a community and you do a really wonderful thing for people, but what are your personal rewards for being part of this as a part of a community? How do you interact in that way?
I usually try to avoid being the center of the prayer group or prayer shawl ministry because it's really the knitters that get together. I'm just there to kind of help, bring the glue to the group and bring things to fruition. In fact, when there's any announcements in church, I usually like to avoid anybody pointing me out singularly and always refer to the group because we're just a very, as I said before, tight-knit group. So pun intended on that too.
Thank you, Mark.
Mark took the words out of my mouth. You did. I mean, I feel exactly the same way.
Yeah, Vince, I don't needlepoint. I needlepoint. I don't knit. And one of the things, especially larger projects where it's a 10 stitch and it's just over and over, there's something about that repetitive motion that helps me to really center in terms of contemplation. And Meg, I was wondering if that, or Mark, do you feel that when you're knitting, that doing the same movement over and over helps to center you in?
When I'm alone and home, definitely. When I'm with the group, not so much because there's so much activity going on. But I did want to thank Connie. During COVID, we got a lot of requests for prayer shawls, and Betsy was instrumental in this also. But Connie and I think Rooney went along with you, but she delivered more prayer shawls and mailed more prayer shawls to people, and it was just wonderful. You must have gone out at least once a week to deliver prayer shawls, Connie, and I want to thank you.
Wonderful. And Rita or Michael?
Actually, I wanted to share with all of you an email that we got from Donna today. Donna Wilson Conyers is usually part of Saturday morning Zoom, and she couldn't be with us, but she sent an email before, and I think it's relevant to what everybody has said. Good morning, all. I intended to be with you this morning, but something has come up that I feel I should do with Marcus, so I'll be remembering you and watching the video when it's posted. However, I'd like to say in support of the presenters and the knitting circle, the system of the right brain needs nurturing and doesn't get much in many of our institutions and Western societies, including schools and churches. The knitting group that Meg and Mark speak of us provides a beautiful example of an opportunity for participants to utilize the right brain and the physical, real act of knitting with our loving spiritual community. And personally, I so enjoyed gifting my mom with a prayer shawl. Thank you, Mark and Meg. Love, Donna.
Thank you, Rita, for sharing that.
All right. Any other thoughts, comments, questions? All right. If not, Michael, go ahead.
Meg, I loved your opening prayer.
Oh, thank you.
Absolutely. It captures the sacredness of what you're doing, you and Mark and all the knitters, because I think a lot of times we think of the spiritual as extraordinary, not ordinary. But your whole prayer was all about ordinary things that you are doing with God's grace to reach out and to share God's love with others. And to me, that captured the spirituality of both groups and the way you are community, the way you support one another. And just thank you. I mean, that was just phenomenal.
I did
Really.
not write that, Michael. You write the best prayers in the world. I just found that.
Well,
I'm glad you
I
enjoyed
would
it.
love
I'm
to have a
glad-
copy of that. I really would.
glad-
It's just fantastic.
I'm glad, I'll be glad to send it over to you.
Michael,
Thank
I'm glad
Thank
you
you.
brought that up because as Meg was reading that prayer, I was reminded of the early Celtic prayers in which the Celts saw God involved in everything they were doing. And so there were prayers for the loom and the parts of the loom and for building the
Yeah.
fire up. And it just rang the Celtic sense of the ordinary, but God being involved in the ordinary actions that we have. Any other
So-
thoughts? Mark?
I was going to say that we usually end our session with the prayer. We don't usually start the session with the prayer because people come in at different times. But at the end of each session before we leave, we always have a prayer, and either I deliver it or somebody else delivers it. And we try to cover all of those same bases and in our prayers as well.
Mark, do you have a copy of the prayer with you?
I do not.
I was gonna say, it'd be a lovely way to end our session.
I have it buried in a bunch of stuff in my knitting bag.
Understood. Well, thank you. Again, Meg and Mark, thank you so much for the presentation. It's just been wonderful. And also,
I will-
Rita, do you want to share about our next?
Yes, I
speaker?
was just going to say that. But one last comment about today's presentation, and that is what I picked up from both of you is the beauty of how the Spirit works. There is no right or wrong way. There are patterns, there are colors, there are prayers before, prayers after. Isn't it amazing how she just likes to get in our life? You know, whatever we're doing, the Spirit likes to be there. Joyfully, and I appreciate that. The plug is the last second Saturday Zoom for this year will be closed out with us by Tom Carney, who some of you may know. Tom is a retired Roman Catholic priest. However, he is the uber volunteer of anyone I've ever met. And so he's going to speak to us about the spirituality of serving others. Tom volunteers not only in many ministries at St. Boniface, but he's been a volunteer at Sarasota Memorial Hospital for close to 20 years. He volunteers at the Y teaching children how to swim. He pretty much, those of you who also have been on the receiving end, if there's something that needs to be done, Tom Carney is somebody that you can call and say, we need a ride, we need this, we need that, and he pretty much is there to do that. So he will be sharing with us. I hope you all join us then, because I think it will be a really good way to end a really difficult year. So God bless you all. Thank you for attending. Thank you, John, for hosting. Thank you, Meg and Mark, and God bless the work of your hands.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Blessings, everyone. Have a great day.
Peace.
Blessings back. Thank you. Peace and love. God bless.
God bless.
Go in peace to love and serve the Lord.
Hey.
Thanks be to God.